Hi, I'm Jeremy, and today we're going to take a look at a game by the name of 23, and this is a small box card game published in Germany by Amigo. It's not available in English at this point, but there are rules translations available on Board Game Geek. The game is designed by Christoph Behre, and it plays from 2 to 4 players, ages 8 and up, in about... The box says 25 minutes, but realistically it'll be more like 15 to 20 minutes. It's a game where players are going to be trying to play out cards from their hand in sequence with the cards numbered from 1 to 23, getting higher over the course of a round. There are a few tweaks, however. Let me take a minute to show you what those tweaks are, and then I'll come back and let you know what I think about the game. So the game of 23 is centered around this deck of cards, which just has numbers from 1 to 23. There's 3 of each number, except that there are only 2 2s and 1 1. And you'll make sure that when you deal 15 cards to each player, the 1 is given to one of the players, and that's easy to do because it's marked separately like that. And then that player will be the first person to play. Before players begin playing, however, they're going to look through their cards and ideally sort them, and they'll be able to discard out 3 of those 15 cards, so they'll only have to play 12 of them. So let's just say this player gets rid of these and this completely randomly, and then this player might get rid of these. And this game does play up to 4 players, so let's just say they get rid of that. And then, starting with the player who has the 1 card, they'll play that, and that'll be their turn. And then it'll go to the other player, and what they have to do on their turn is play 1 or more cards that are equal to, which is not possible in the case of the 1, or higher than that number. So if this player played the 2, that'd be fine. As long as you're playing the same value or 1 higher, there's no penalty incurred. And these are going to be penalty chips. Each player is also going to start with 3 of these bonus chips, which I'll explain in one moment. Then I go back to this player, and they have a 2, so they could just play their 2 on there also. If they had more than 1 of a value, like this player has 2 3s, they could play that on there. And the idea of the game is that you're going to be playing over 2 rounds, and you want to get rid of your cards while incurring as few penalties as possible. So besides playing cards to this pile, so this player here has a 4, then you'll notice this player has a 4, then this player has some 5s, this player has a 5. Then it would come back to this player, and you notice they don't have a 6. If they need to skip the 6, that's possible, but for every number that they skip, beyond the first number, they'll have to take a penalty chip. So if they played a 7 on the 5, they would have to take 1 chip. Let's say they played an 8, they would have to take 2 chips. Another thing that you could do on your turn, this player still has an 8, that'd be fine, but let's say it comes back here, they have 9s, this player here has a 10, and so on. But let's say they didn't have this 10, and they had to play next, a 12, or they had these cards left in their hand. If they wanted to play the 12, they could do that, and they would, like I said, take 2 chips. Or what they could do is they could pass, and there's 2 ways to pass. You can either take 1 chip to pass, and then they'll just go to the next player, and they have to play on that. Or if you take 2 chips and choose to pass, this player is obligated to play onto that, even if it means taking on a lot of penalty chips or using these bonus chips. The way that these bonus chips work is that if you spend them, they will give you the ability to add 5 or subtract 5 to this number. So for example, if this player played this, subtracted 5 from the 9, that would go down to 4, and they would be able to play their 4. You could spend multiple of those during the game, or during a turn, but they do not replenish over the course of the 2 rounds, so those are limited. The other option is, let's say that this player decided that they didn't want to take on any more penalty chips. If they wanted to just cash out, they could choose at any time to quit the round, and then they would just take 1 penalty chip for each card left in their hand. So that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, and they would just be out of the round. And then any other players who are left in the round will continue playing until they choose to drop out or play all of their cards, and then that would end the round. You will just reshuffle the cards, do a second round of play just like the first, and then at the end of the game you're going to tally up the number of penalty chips that players have, and for every green chip they still have, you'll be able to subtract 2 penalty chips. At the end of that, whichever player has the fewer penalty chips will be the winner. All right, so that is 23, and this is a nice little filler game. I don't think it's an absolutely top tier filler game, but it's one that I think, justifies a 15 to 20 minute playtime. One of the things I'm not happy about with the game, which I completely understand from a design perspective, is the fact that it only goes from 2 to 4 players. Of course, if you had more players, it would take too long for your turn to come back around, and the numbers that would go by between your plays would be too great, and so it wouldn't really work with higher player counts. But it seems like a game that would really lend itself well to a larger social gathering, much like the game No Thanks does, which is something that this really reminds me of. I think I prefer No Thanks to this, but this is a nice alternative if you do like the game No Thanks, which I know is a very popular game. This might be worth seeking out. At first, when you start playing it seems very simple. You're just going to play the next card and your moves seem pretty obvious, but really navigating those gaps, which you're going to be able to see at the start of the hand, based on the cards that you choose to discard, where those gaps will be, figuring out a plan to navigate those with costing the fewest number of chips is really where the strategy of the game lies. I do think that it's nice, and on one hand the game plays over 2 rounds, that reduces the amount of luck, but at the same time I don't think that 2 rounds alone is maybe enough to make a player have a decisive strategic win over another player. They can't, say with just 2 rounds with a game where you're only getting, 15 cards each round, that they've played better because of that. But it's a 15-minute game, and that's okay. So, I mean, all in all, I think that this is a fine little light card game. It cost me only a few euros to buy, and I'm happy with the purchase. It's not one that I pull out every time I'm looking for a short card game, and that's partially because it's only a 2 to 4 player game. Again, that's somewhat disappointing, but it does work well for what it is. It gives you some unique, strategic decisions to make within a 20-minute time frame, and I think that for people who are looking for something similar to No Thanks, this would really be right up the alley. So those are my thoughts on 23. Thanks for watching.